Hello guys, welcome to the video. Today it's going to be a general video about how to prepare for the medicine MMIs. So essentially the MMIs are multiple mini interviews and they're really intense, and a lot of people are quite skeptical about them because they don't know how to prepare or how to approach them. So today I'm going to give you my 8 general tips about how to approach them and hopefully destroy them. Alright, so the background, I've had a UCL panel interview and St Andrews MMI very recently. I've actually got the offer from the UCL one and I feel the St Andrews one went very well. I received the information probably in March, so I don't actually know how I really did, but it felt like it went quite well. Alright, let's get into this. So my number one tip is know the MMIs. And by that I mean know generally what to expect. So look on this prospectus, the website, look at the listing of the interviews and how many MMI stations you're going to have, how long they are, and they may give you information like if you're going to have a role play station, because that's quite a daunting one and you can prepare for it. So it's good to know if you have it or not, because if you haven't prepared it's quite one of the hardest ones. If you have, it's usually quite an easy one and you can really smash it. So for example, my St Andrews one, I had 6 MMIs and they were both 6 minutes each long. For my Plymouth and Manchester medical school ones that are coming up in January, I've got 7 MMI stations, each 7 minutes long. All of my MMIs have a role-playing station. It's quite general for MMIs to have a role-play station, but some don't, so it's good to know. And also you want to know why you want to go to that medical school. So these are like the general questions. So why medicine? I'm not going to give you an answer for that because it's very personal and you should have your own, and as long as it's personal you should be fine. Like it's quite, yeah, there's no masking for it. And then for the why this medical school, there is no guideline at all. Like you can just go off the trot and go what you want to say. But for me, I structure my answer in 2 parts. Firstly, I say why the medical curriculum, so how they're teaching the 6-year or 5-year medicine course suits me. And then I just talk about the second thing as what I can bring to the medical school, or what unique things about the area where it's situated draws me there. So a cheeky example, for Plymouth it's problem-based learning. So you could talk about you're a proactive person, you prefer self-study, you feel that working in small groups is very relevant because it's pretty much as close as it can get to the real life profession when you're a doctor, because you work in multidisciplinary teams. So you're going to be developing not just your academic knowledge but also your communication skills, your team working skills, interacting with your peers, having early clinical exposure, because that will be quite motivating, seeing the application of your scientific knowledge early on, and you'll also start to develop skills such as like professionalism sooner rather than later, which is pivotal for good practice, so it's good to know. I'm just giving examples, like you can really go off it, but situate obviously your curriculum or like your points for each one to each medical school, because for example UCL and St Andrews are integrated, Plymouth and Manchester for me are problem-based learning, so obviously you've got to have different points for each. And then for the second point, you want to talk about the unique features or something that draws you to the area, what you can bring. So what you can bring, I mean by like society-wise, so you could research what societies uni offers, say you'd be interested in joining them, or you could talk about, I don't know, what research aspects you'd bring or the unique area. So for example, UCL is in London obviously, and it has a very, very diverse patient demographic, lots of multiculturalism, love different cultures, love that aspect of it. Furthermore, you're going to see very specialist treatments in London. Then you could talk about the placement hospital. So they have a UCLH placement hospital, a very highly regarded tertiary teaching hospital, which has a Macmillan Cancer Centre. So they're both privilege and a very exciting research opportunity, because you could see such specialist treatments. But again, just examples, but just giving you some flavour for it. Okay, and then you want to prepare for not prepare, but have talking points for like questions such as what's the downsides of medicine, or what's your biggest failure, or stuff like that. Like just questions you just want to have talking points around in your head. I'll explain further on about what I mean by talking points. Okay, and point number 2 now is going to be what they're going to be testing for you, marking you on in each station. So it's not one station, it's every MMI station they're going to be testing these things on you. Number one, the most important one I would say, is body language. It's important because a lot of people don't think about it, and it's such an important and honest form of expression, and it really sets a subconscious mood in your interviewer's mind depending on your body language. So you know, they say first impressions count, and that also means body language. So when you walk into the room, make sure your chair is facing the person or the interviewer. If it's not, move it. Strong handshake, obviously, before and after. When you go for the handshake, eye contact, say thank you, whatever you do, go back. Or you could do a Donald Trump, and as you do the handshake, you could do two hands on top of them. It's like apparently good. I've never done it, but you know, it might work. You could also, well no, you should, when you sit down, obviously lean forward, show you're interested. If they're talking to you, nod, you know, good eye contact always. When you're sitting, maybe have a respectful pose. So for guys, have your legs open, you know, wide stance, quite confident pose. It shows you're not nervous. I don't know if it'd work for girls, but you know what I mean. Just like good posture, good posture. And when you're talking, you want to maintain eye contact with every single person there. So I know MMIs usually have one or two people, rarely three, but even when you're talking, if it's possible, if they're like all in front of you, look at each in person as you're talking, so it shows that you're engaging with everyone, and because they're all going to be marking you, so you want them all to feel included and for them all to like you, because at the end of the day, it is generally, each station is trying to make that person like you in whatever time slot you have, time period. And smile, guys, smile when appropriate. So just show you're enthusiastic, show you're passionate. Okay, like you got this far, you might as well be happy, you know, just show you're a person. Again, the second aspect of what they're testing is definitely going to be your communication. So this is very broad, but I mean, speak clearly, speak fluently. When you're talking, if you don't know what to say and you can't say it in a structured manner straight away, pause, take a breath, think in your mind, come up with a structure to talk about so you don't just waffle on, you know, don't be that guy. Be clear, and I think it's called coherent in your answer, so make sure it's very structured. I've been on a variety of MMI courses and panel interview preparation courses by the Medic Portal, and a good thing they mentioned is the STAR technique. So it's a situation, task, action, result, reflection. I haven't actually used it in any of my interviews to date, but essentially it just gives you a good guideline of how to structure your answer if it's relevant. Is make sure your answer is relevant. They have a mark scheme. They're not going to give you marks just because they like you. They may well, but to get the majority of marks, you're going to have to answer the question they're asking you. So again, that comes with pausing, taking a breath, and answering the relevant question. And remember, reflection is the biggest, most important thing. As a doctor, reflection is pivotal to good practice, how to improve. So reflection, if anything, is one that should be emphasized the most. So for example, they can ask that in so many stations. So like, generic one, tell me about your work experience. You can say like, I've done all this, this and this, and you'll get 0 marks. You want to reflect upon it and explain what you learned and how it interested you and what you've done to go from there, or enhance your learning, or yada yada yada, or something very interesting you observed. So many different things you can talk about. They can ask so many different stations where reflection is pivotal. Okay, so this brings me to point number 3. Every medical student has to show some skills of being a doctor. And by this, I mean, they're called technically buzzwords of being a good doctor of good practice. So essentially, effective communication, resilience, teamwork, leadership, empathy. There's one more, integrity. That's just to name a few. There's lots of them, but those are the main ones. And essentially, you want to have times where you've observed and demonstrated those skills. So for example, when you've observed them, that could be in your hospital work experience is a good one to talk about. So make sure you have just 3 or 4, if you really want to go nuts, times when, observed some key skills of being a good doctor, or even when you observe maybe bad practice and how you could improve upon it. And then next, you want to have some key personal experiences in your mind of when you've demonstrated said skills. So these, I think you should have a bit more just to be safe. So try and have around 5 of 6. To be honest, it's so flimsy. You can draw them from anywhere when you've demonstrated said skills. could be from your work experience, but mainly observed in your experience. So it could be on your volunteer work, societies you're part of, your clubs you're part of, your sports, even in your day-to-day life, like when like maybe you have to care for a family member, or you help your grandma or something, you know, I don't know. But you can draw it from anywhere and just have some in the back of your mind, because the last thing you want to be is thrown back and just have no clue when they ask this, spring this question at you. Make sure your experiences are personal and they're specific. So remember, they're orienting around the buzzword of, for example, leadership. So, you know, you could have a time like you could talk about, I don't know, if you've ran a club, delegating tasks, planning it, being proactive during the session, making sure everything's running smoothly, make sure everyone's involved and giving it their best, I don't know, stuff like that. But, you know, you just have those key personal experiences in your mind. Okay, this brings me on to point number 4, which is going to be the ethics station. So they're going to have an ethics station, they always do in every one. And essentially the main thing you want to avoid is coming to a conclusion straight away and rambling. So the marks lie in how you come to your answer, so how you take your holistic approach, consider all the different factors. So essentially, to avoid having a rambly answer, I like to use the 4 pillars of medical ethics as an answer frame. So the beneficence, autonomy, justice and non-maleficence. So you can just talk around those pillars. It doesn't apply to every ethical situation, but it's just something to keep in mind, and they're good buzzwords to use as well. Shows you know your stuff. Furthermore, this is like quite top end stuff, so if you don't have to do this, but maybe in your conclusion, if you want to, like, how you're concluding your answer, if it's relevant, is you can refer to like utilitarianism, which is the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. That's utilitarianism. It's quite relevant, it's quite fair, because obviously it's like a numbers game, and it's just good to throw in there if you can, because it's a very good buzzword. There's also other ones like ethical egotism, which is like an action is good depending on yourself and no one else, so I wouldn't mention that one, but you know, free will. And there's also ethical altruism, where it's only good for the everyone else, but you don't take into consideration your factors. So they're pretty much the opposite, egotism and altruism. But you know, it's just like, just give it a Google, and you know, it will just help you out in those ethical stations if you want to get like the top marks. And also know the GMC's guidelines, you know, NHS's principles. So free at the point of delivery, based on clinical need, and accessible to everyone. So that might help in your coming up with your ethical conclusions. Just do some further reading. This brings me on to point number 5, which is going to be know the NHS. So when I say know the NHS, not who founded it, not when it was founded. Don't become just a like history book of the NHS. I mean, know the current hot topics regarding the NHS. So what's happening at the moment, and be opinionated. Essentially, this is just a station for them to get to know you and to know where you stand on certain, debatable or controversial topics. They want to know where you stand. Like, there's no right and wrong. Obviously, maybe some answers, you know, maybe a bit more right than others, but essentially just have opinions, be yourself, and be able to argue for and against, and be able to be resilient when they push you, because if they're poking you a little bit, and they may well, it shows that they're liking you and they think you're good, so they just want to see how far you can go. Like in my UCL interview, I thought it went terrible, I thought I flopped it, because they kept poking me for things I made, the points I made. They were like, would you really do that? I wouldn't do that, that's silly. And I was just like, no, I stood my ground, and then I gave a bit of extra additional information why. And yeah, I got an offer fairly quickly, so yeah, it's a good thing. It shows they like you and they know you're good. They just want to push you that little bit more. And they just want to see if you can relax, and you can still think structuredly under pressure, because MMIs in themselves are going to be stressy and pressure, and I'll come on to dealing with that later, but essentially just be relaxed. And yeah. Okay, so that's point number 5. Brings on to point number 6 now, role play station. Alright, essentially the role play station is probably, if not one of the most daunting ones for most candidates, and it's actually quite easy to prepare for and do well in if you just know what they're looking for, because it's going to feel very, very unnatural and weird. But essentially they have a mark scheme, and you can tick that mark scheme very easily. So you want to be a human, like, keep that in the back of your mind, and a good way to do that is try and override the feeling of fakeness and make it feel real. So make sure, like, make it feel like you know that person and or that patient, and then it'll have a subconscious like effect where you'll be more of a human. I don't know, that works for me. But essentially when you walk into this room, it's gonna most of the time be a Breaking Bad news. And if it's a patient or even a friend, you want to pull the chair up so you're close to them, directly facing them. Like I said, the body language stuff, so open, eye contact, hand gestures. But in this roleplay station, mainly it's going to be based on listening. So do not interrupt the person if they're talking, please. That's like the worst thing you can do. Listen, listen, listen. Active listening, so nodding, going like saying like you know, like when you can, and good eye contact and all that. But essentially the mark scheme goes, so open, good boy language. If they're a friend or a patient, if they're a friend, we'll start with that one. Small talk, so just say if like, how's your day been, or if they come back on holiday, or how's your time in there, or something along those lines. If they're a patient, and if it is a Breaking Bad news station, a good thing to do is after you've introduced yourself, you can say, tell me about what you know about your illness so far, or something like that, if they have cancer or something like that. And then they'll build up to the bad news for you, so they're doing the work for you, and obviously active listen while they're doing that. And then after you've established comfortness, you've introduced yourself, you've talked a bit, fire the warning shot. So the warning shot, a lot of people overthink this. It is so simple, just be like, I've got some bad news. Don't smile like me when you're saying it, but you know, be serious. And pause for a little bit then, so they can go, oh, okay, and they'll get like also the act all serious and all that. And then essentially you want to explicitly state, shoot straight, the bad news. No bullshit, no beating around the bush, just the bad news. So if you've killed their cat, I've killed your cat, you know, or if they've got cancer, you've got cancer. And the biggest importantest thing after that, I would say in the whole roleplay station, is the pause. Like, the pause is so important, and let me give you a little story why. So I spoke to I think he's a paediatric consultant, a Polish doctor. He's so funny. Essentially he said, when you break to a patient, if they have cancer for example, the bad news, all they'll remember is your body language, your face, and cancer. Nothing past that. And that is a really good rule of thumb to keep in your mind, and when you're doing this station, and how important the pause is to let them take in that news. And then from that, if they get angry, if they get sad, be a human. So if they're sad and there's a prop for a box of tissues, offer them tissues. If they're getting angry, be like, I understand where you're coming from, or be like, obviously I can't help you when you're like this, or something like that. You know, try to calm them down. Try to be empathetic and understand their situation. So put yourself in their shoes, and then everything should naturally follow. Even you could put your hand on their hand, you know, as a comforting thing, but you know, keep it PG. Essentially, yeah, just be a human in that bit. And then from there, you want to engage in a partnership. So end it on a high note. Be like, if they're a patient, you could say, even if they're dying, like, we have excellent palliative care services, or this is how I can help you, or how we're going to go forward. If they're your friend and you've lost their cat, you can say, I'm going to put up posters, or I'm going to get an internet service or apply somewhere where we can find it and work together. Or you could, if you've killed their cat, but don't say stupid things. Don't say like, I can buy you a new cat. Like, just don't be an idiot, and you'll essentially be fine. Because the actors are going to act on what you say. So if you say something that's would offend a person in real life, they're going to get offended, and it's just not going to be good for anyone. So just don't do that, because then it'll stress you out for the next station. So yeah, don't be an idiot, and then you'll ace that roleplay station. Okay, now let's get on to point number 7, which is just going to be relax, guys. So essentially, before the MMI, you want to get there in plenty of time. If it's far away from where you live, get the train or whatever up beforehand, and get a good night's sleep on a good hotel bed before. Be refreshed in the morning, do your morning ritual, whatever you do, just get nice and refreshed and relaxed. If you're like me, go and see where you're going to get interviewed the day before, and the local area around it, because it just has a subconscious relaxing effect for me. It may work for you. Furthermore, when you go to the interview, talk to the other candidates, socialise, you know, be a human, relax, have fun. You've got this far, bond with the other people, get some bands going, you know, just laugh and have a good time. when you're actually in the stations, know that every person, as scary as they look, every interviewer wants to get the best out of you. So be yourself, be happy, you already made it this far, you know, don't be true to yourself, be yourself, and it will go absolutely fine, just be relaxed. Okay guys, and that brings me on to point number 8, final point, which is essentially, if you've noticed, there's overarching themes of everything I said, and every MMI station is related to medicine in some way or form. So essentially, I'm just going to put somewhere on the screen each point and what the overarching theme relating to medicine is. And I hope you just got some overall picture now of like how it's all linked to medicine, and every station in some shape or form is linked. So you want to, when you're talking, if you go off topic, just remember as a rule of thumb to bring it back around to medicine, and you'll be absolutely fine. Like, shows you're on it and you're good. Yeah, so that's my MMI tips, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Essentially, just ask me any questions and I'll try and answer them as soon as I can. Don't ask me any questions about the specifics regarding my UCL or St Andrews interview, please, because I'll get banned, can't answer those, but any general questions and I'll try my very best to help you. Alright guys, appreciate your time, cheers.